I can understand how you guys feel. It's the worst possible feeling. It's confusion, it's anger, it's just an overall broken.
Blake Shelton is one of the most recognizable names in country music, a man whose voice, humor, and down-to-earth charm made him both a beloved star and a household name through The Voice. Yet behind the laughter, chart-topping hits, and public image of happiness, there is another story, one filled with personal battles, losses that cut deep, and choices that left scars. At 49, Blake's life may look like a success story, but the tragedies he has faced and the pain he continues to carry make his journey far more heartbreaking than fans ever imagined. Blake Tollison Shelton was born on June 18, 1976, in the small town of Ada, Oklahoma. From the outside, his childhood seemed filled with the usual hallmarks of small-town life: family gatherings, church singing, and country values. But from a young age, Blake found himself struggling with pressures most kids didn't carry. His older brother Richie was a central figure in his life. Richie introduced him to music, helped shape his love for guitars and songwriting, and acted as both a mentor and a protector. But this bond would one day be shattered in a way that changed Blake forever. Growing up, Blake's family didn't have much. His father, Richard Shelton, worked as a used car salesman and taught Blake the meaning of hard work, while his mother, Dorothy, ran a beauty salon and tried to provide stability. Yet behind the smiles and community charm, money was tight, opportunities were scarce, and dreams of stardom seemed almost impossible. Blake himself has admitted that even as a kid, he often battled insecurity about whether he was good enough to make it beyond Oklahoma. Despite these doubts, Blake began writing songs by the age of 15. He won small competitions, performed at local events, and slowly began building confidence. His rich baritone voice stood out, and by 17, he had packed his bags and moved to Nashville, a decision that would eventually change his life. But moving to the big city came with loneliness, rejection, and countless nights wondering if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Then came the tragedy that would define Blake's early years. In 1990, when Blake was just 14, his older brother Richie died in a car accident. Richie was only 24 years old. For Blake, the loss was devastating. He not only lost his brother, but also the man who had inspired him to chase music. To this day, Blake admits that Richie's death left an emptiness in his heart that has never gone away. In interviews, he recalls how his family was never the same, and how the tragedy forced him to grow up far too quickly. This heartbreak seeped into Blake's music. Songs like Over You, which he co-wrote with Miranda Lambert, were directly inspired by his brother's death. While the world sang along to the lyrics, few realized the personal pain behind every word. For Blake, success in music was always tied to the ghost of Richie. Every award, every chart topper, and every standing ovation carried with it the reminder of who wasn't there to see it. Blake's early years in Nashville were far from glamorous. He took odd jobs, survived on little money, and knocked on doors of record labels that often closed before he could step inside. But Blake's determination was relentless. Finally, in 2001, his debut single, Austin, hit #1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, holding that spot for 5 weeks. It was the breakthrough he had dreamed of, but even then, his private grief remained. Fans saw the rising star, the young country singer with a crooked smile and soulful voice. What they didn't see was the man still mourning his brother, still wrestling with doubts, and still wondering if his success would ever fill the emptiness inside. Blake Shelton had stepped into the spotlight, but tragedy had already marked him in ways that fame could never erase. As Blake Shelton's career took off in the early 2000s, so did the complexities of his personal life. Fame had finally arrived, but it came hand in hand with pressures that tested not only his patience, but also his relationships. In 2003, Blake married his longtime girlfriend, Kaynette Williams. She had been with him through the difficult early years, standing by his side when he was broke, unknown, and struggling to get a foothold in Nashville. To many, she seemed like the perfect partner for Blake. the woman who grounded him while he navigated the chaos of the music industry. But success has a way of changing everything. With Blake constantly touring, writing, and chasing the dream he had finally achieved, his marriage began to strain. By 2006, the couple had divorced. For Knet, the breakup was deeply painful, and for Blake, it was the first public crack in his otherwise rising career. He would later admit that while he loved Knet, he simply wasn't ready for marriage, nor did he fully understand the sacrifices that his fame would demand. Only a year later, Blake met Miranda Lambert, a rising star in her own right. Their chemistry was undeniable. They toured together, wrote songs together, and quickly became one of country music's most talked-about couples. Fans adored their fiery dynamic, and when they married in 2011, it seemed like a match made in Nashville heaven. Yet behind the glitz of magazine covers and red carpet smiles, their relationship was far more turbulent than anyone knew. Blake and Miranda's marriage was filled with highs and lows. They collaborated musically, creating songs that seemed to blend their shared pain and passion, but rumors of jealousy, long-distance strain, and conflicting ambitions constantly swirled. Miranda was fiercely independent, with a career on the rise, while Blake was balancing both country stardom and his new role as a coach on The Voice. The two were rarely in the same place for long, and the weight of their separate careers pulled them apart more than it held them together. In 2015, after 4 years of marriage, Blake and Miranda announced their divorce. The news sent shockwaves through the country music world. For Blake, it was another devastating personal blow, one that played out on the public stage. He admitted that the divorce was one of the lowest points of his life. Behind the scenes, he was drinking heavily, using humor to mask his pain and struggling to find his footing. In later interviews, Blake confessed that he leaned on his Voice co-star, Adam Levine, during that dark time, often calling him late at night just to talk. The tragedy of his failed marriages wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about identity. Blake had built his music on themes of love, family, and loss. With each failed relationship, he questioned not only his personal life, but also his artistic truth. Could he still sing convincingly about love when his own had fallen apart so publicly? Then, in a twist that few expected, Gwen Stefani entered his life. Like Blake, Gwen was reeling from a divorce, hers from Gavin Rossdale. Their shared pain brought them closer, and what started as a friendship soon blossomed into romance. Fans were skeptical at first. After all, what could a California pop star and an Oklahoma country boy possibly have in common? But their relationship defied expectations, becoming a source of healing for both of them. Still, even with Gwen by his side, Blake carried emotional scars. The divorces, the loss of stability, and the feeling that he had failed those closest to him weighed heavily on his heart. His relationship with Gwen helped him rediscover joy, but it couldn't erase the past or the painful chapters that had shaped him. Blake Shelton's public image remained that of a witty, charming jokester, the guy who traded playful jabs with Adam Levine on television. But beneath the laughter was a man who had endured 2 divorces, battled self-doubt, and leaned on alcohol to numb his grief. At 49, he often reflects on these painful years, recognizing that while fame gave him everything, it also took pieces of his personal life that he could never fully get back. The tragedies of love and loss didn't just shape Blake Shelton the man, they shaped Blake Shelton the artist. His music, often raw and filled with longing, mirrored the heartbreaks he lived through. Fans connected with his songs not just because they were catchy, but because they carried the weight of someone who had truly loved, lost, and struggled to move forward. When Blake Shelton joined The Voice in 2011, he was already a country music star. But no one could have predicted how much the show would elevate his fame. Suddenly, Blake wasn't just a Nashville name. He was a national television personality, known for his quick wit, sharp one-liners, and undeniable chemistry with his fellow coaches. Viewers fell in love with the playful banter between Blake and Adam Levine, and millions tuned in weekly not only for the music, but also for Blake's humor and charm. For many, Blake seemed to be living the dream. He had chart-topping albums, a TV show that made him a household name, and a growing fan base that adored his laid-back personality. But fame has a way of hiding the truth. While the world saw a smiling, joking Blake Shelton on screen behind the cameras, he was grappling with emotional pain and personal struggles that often went unnoticed. Alcohol became a regular companion. Blake himself admitted to heavy drinking during this period, often using it as a way to cope with the stress of his career and the heartbreak of his divorce from Miranda Lambert. His jokes about drinking on The Voice made audiences laugh, but for those who knew him closely, the humor masked something darker. Friends worried that his reliance on alcohol was a way to dull feelings he hadn't fully confronted. His father's declining health only added to the turmoil. Richard Shelton had always been a grounding force in Blake's life, teaching him values of honesty and hard work. In 2012, Blake's father passed away, leaving him devastated, just like losing his brother Richie decades. Earlier, this loss cut deeply. Blake later said that writing and performing music became his therapy, but even then, he struggled with the silence left behind by the people he loved most. The Voice gave Blake a new kind of family, but it also intensified the pressure. The non-stop filming schedule, tours, and media appearances left little time for privacy or self-reflection. Fans saw a star at the height of his success, but the man himself often admitted he felt lonely, even when surrounded by people. Success, it seemed, was both a blessing and a burden. His relationship with Gwen Stefani helped provide stability during these years. The two leaned on each other, both emerging from divorces that had left them broken. Blake credited Gwen with pulling him out of one of the darkest periods of his life, saying she gave him a reason to keep moving forward. Yet even in love, Blake carried insecurities. He sometimes questioned whether he deserved happiness, given the pain he had caused and endured in his past. Professionally, The Voice cemented his legacy. Blake became the winningest coach in the show's history, mentoring dozens of young artists and helping launch their careers. Yet even here there was a shadow. While he loved guiding new talent, Blake often confessed that he worried about whether he was giving enough to his own music. Balancing TV fame with his identity as a country artist left him wondering if he was spreading himself too thin. The tragedy in this chapter of Blake's life is not just about death or divorce. It's about the weight of expectation. To millions, he was the funny, lovable cowboy who had it all. But to himself, he was a man still wrestling with grief, self-doubt, and the fear that no matter how successful he became, the void left by his brother, father, and failed marriages could never be filled. When Blake joked about drinking, teased Adam Levine, or smiled on stage, fans believed they were seeing the whole picture. But the truth was far more complicated. Beneath the laughter was a man whose fame magnified both his triumphs and his tragedies. And as Blake turned toward his late 40s, those shadows loomed larger, forcing him to confront not only the life he had built, but also the pain he had carried for decades. As Blake Shelton entered his late 40s, his life seemed to reach a crossroads. To the outside world, he was a superstar who had achieved everything. Countless #1 hits, millions of records sold, and a decade-long run on one of the most popular shows on television. He had wealth, fame, and the love of Gwen Stefani. Yet, behind the glittering surface, there remained a deeper truth, one that revealed just how much tragedy, sacrifice, and personal struggle had shaped his journey. Blake's decision to step away from The Voice in 2023 shocked fans. After 23 seasons, he announced his departure, explaining that he wanted to slow down and spend more time with family. On the surface, it seemed like a well-earned break for a man who had given so much of his life to the industry. But insiders noted that the choice was also tied to his ongoing battle with exhaustion and the emotional toll of years spent juggling fame with private pain. Blake confessed that he longed for the quiet of his Oklahoma ranch, where he could reconnect with the land, his roots, and a simpler way of life. The loss of his father and brother continued to weigh heavily on him. Even at 49, Blake often spoke about how those absences shaped the way he viewed the world. Richie's death remained the great wound of his youth, while his father's passing left him without one of his biggest supporters. These tragedies influenced not only his music but also his worldview. Blake admitted in interviews that he sometimes felt survivor's guilt. That strange, haunting sense of questioning why he was allowed to carry on when those closest to him had been taken too soon. His relationship with Gwen Stefani became both a source of healing and a target for public scrutiny. Their 2021 marriage was celebrated widely, yet it also invited criticism from skeptics who doubted the authenticity of their union. For Blake, the negativity was painful, as he felt that Gwen had saved him during one of the lowest points in his life. She gave him strength when he had little left, and together they found common ground despite coming from two very different worlds. Still, their marriage placed Blake under a new kind of spotlight, one that forced him to constantly defend his happiness. As he reached 49, Blake also faced the reality of aging in an industry obsessed with youth. Country music has long embraced older artists, but television and pop culture often focus on the next big thing. For a man who built his career on being the relatable, quick-witted star, stepping back meant risking the possibility of being forgotten. This fear lingered beneath his decision to retreat from constant public life, making his later years bittersweet. At the same time, Blake's health became a growing concern. While he has not spoken publicly about serious medical issues, fans have often noted his fluctuating weight, constant jokes about drinking, and the visible signs of weariness in his face. The hard-living lifestyle of touring, coupled with decades of stress, seemed to catch up with him. In candid moments, Blake admitted that he wanted to live a quieter, healthier life, free from the relentless cycle of fame. What makes Blake Shelton's story so heartbreaking is not a single tragedy, but a lifetime of them. From losing his brother at 14, to the pain of 2 divorces, to the grief of his father's death, Blake has endured more heartache than most fans realize. Even as he built an empire of music and television success, the shadow of loss never truly left him. His songs, often tinged with sadness and longing, stand as a testament to a man who has loved deeply, lost profoundly, and kept moving forward even when it hurt the most. Now, at 49, Blake Shelton finds himself searching for peace. Whether it's through his marriage to Gwen, his retreat to the Oklahoma countryside, or his continued dedication to music, he is seeking something that fame could never provide: healing. And while his public persona remains that of the funny, lovable cowboy, those who look closely can see the truth. Behind every joke and every song is a man carrying a lifetime of heartbreak.